Okay, well, our first passage regards the sliding stones to the Forbidden City in Beijing. And the Forbidden City, comma, built in the 15th and 16th century in Beijing, comma, China, comma, is a complex consisting of the Imperial Palace and 980 surrounding buildings. Now, if you look at this, right, you separate the city from the country with a comma, so that looks correct. What would you do after China? Okay, well, I'll explain this to you. The Forbidden City is a complex consisting of. So this phrase right here is a subordinate clause, and it needs to be separated by commas. So you have a comma here to separate the city from the country, but you have a comma here corresponding to the comma here to close off this subordinate clause. So actually, this is correct the way it is. And if you take out the subordinate clause, you would just read the sentence as the Forbidden City is a complex consisting of the Imperial Palace and 980 surrounding buildings, which is a perfectly good sentence. So you always test it. And if you want to know what a subordinate clause is, try to pull it out and see if it still makes a good sentence for you. Okay. A large number of massive stones were used in its construction, comma, some of them featured elaborate carvings. Now, this comma, okay, separates the rest of the sentence from this part of the sentence. But if you really look at the rest of the sentence, right, the way it's written, some of them featured elaborate carvings. That's a complete sentence. So you wouldn't want to separate two complete sentences with a comma. If this were a semicolon, it might make sense. But because this is a complete sentence, this comma is not appropriate, right? So the comma has to be there because it's not underlined. So we need some kind of a clause here that's not a complete sentence. So look at choice 1, no change. That's a complete sentence. Choice 2, some of them, some were engraved with carvings, with elaborate carvings. Again, that's a complete sentence. Some of these had elaborate carvings. That's a complete sentence. Well, look at answer J. Some with elaborate carvings. That's the only choice that creates a clause that is not a complete sentence, where a comma is appropriate. So the way the sentence would read is, a large number of massive stones were used in its construction, comma, some with elaborate carvings, period. So the right answer here is J, with. Because China had developed sophisticated wheeled vehicles 2,000 years before construction on the city began, comma, scholars assumed that workers had used carts to transport the stones to the site, period. So that sentence looks good. However, comma, a document translated by researchers Jiang Li, Haosheng Chen, and Howard Stone in 2013 revealed that workers used a surprising means of transportation, a sledge pulled on ice. So let's go back and let's look at this list, okay? Translated by researchers Jiang Li, comma, it's a list, right? Haosheng Chen, comma, and Howard Stone in 1913. So this comma doesn't belong there, okay? It's the last item in a list. It doesn't need to be separated from the rest of the sentence with a comma. So what you want is you want a listing, comma after Li, comma after Chen, and no comma after Stone, okay? And if you go to B, you'll see it. Researchers Li, Chen, and Stone in 2013, okay? There's a comma here, but no comma after stone. So B is the correct answer, okay? Revealed that workers used a surprising means of transportation, okay? Semicolon, a sledge pulled on ice. So you know semicolon is wrong because what comes after it is not a complete sentence. A sledge pulled on ice, right? There is no complete sentence. There's no verb, okay? So semicolon has to be wrong, which means no change has to be wrong. So the next choice is transportation, colon, being a sledge pulled on ice. Well, the word being is unnecessary. When you have a reiteration of something, a surprising means of transportation, another way of saying it is a sledge pulled on ice. So even though the colon is correct, okay, because colon will separate something restated from the original if they're basically identical, okay? But the word being doesn't belong there. All you really need is a colon and then a sledge pulled on ice. So let's look and see what choice that would be. H, surprising means of transportation, colon, a sledge pulled on ice. So this phrase essentially is giving you an explication of what the transportation is. And that's why the colon works there. It's basically the same thing as transportation. So the colon is telling you, let me explain what I mean, okay? So the right answer to 4 is H. All righty, let's move on. The document that was later translated by Zhang, Haosheng, and Stone stated that in January 1557, a team of men hauled 123-ton stone to the Forbidden City on a sledge. The document that was later translated, okay? You're repeating yourself. You just saw in the last paragraph that it was translated. Why are you saying the same thing again? So this is clearly wrong because it is redundant, repetitive, unnecessary. So really, if you think about it, all the choices here, no change, that was the same one that described the use of a sledge. It was translated in 2000. All of this is redundant. So delete it. You don't need it. The document stated, see, you already know what document you're talking about. You don't need to describe it again the same way. So just get rid of it. So the right answer to 5 is D, delete the underlined portion. The document stated that in January 1557, a team of men hauled 123-ton stone to the Forbidden City on a sledge, and this explains it, a platform with wooden runners. Okay, the men pulled the sledge 45 miles in 28 days, moving about 20 feet per minute. Zhang, Sheng, and Stone wondered why the workers chose to slide the stones on sledges instead of using carts, okay? So the 3 of them in the past tense, these 3 researchers wondered why the workers chose to slide the stone on sledges instead of using carts, period. This looks perfectly correct to me, okay? Themselves wondered is totally unnecessary. You don't need a reflexive there, okay? You're naming the 3 people in the third person, and then you're using a verb that is a past tense plural. So you don't need a reflexive there, okay? You don't need to repeat that they were researchers because we already know that. Asked why and for what reason? Why is the same thing as for what reason. So again, this is redundant. So the only right answer here is no change. And Stone wondered why the workers chose to slide stones on sledges instead of using carts. They calculated that the city's largest stones dash, some weighing up to 300 tons dash. See the colon there? Do you need that? Do you need that colon? No, you don't. There's no reason for it. So the phrase between the dashes should be some weighing up to 300 tons with no punctuation there. So the right answer is B. See it right there? You just have to make sure that this phrase is between two dashes. But this colon is totally out of place. Doesn't belong. Okay? We're too heavy for 16th century carts to carry, period. In addition, comma, the rough, bumpy roads of the time made maneuvering the carts difficult, period. Sledges were easier, smoother, and more reliable. Okay? So that's all correct. All of that looks good. But how could a team of men only drag a heavy sledge 45 miles in a few weeks? Okay. The writer wants to emphasize that a few weeks was a short period of time in which to move a sledge 45 miles. Which replacement of the underlined portion best accomplishes the goal? Well, if you want to show that it's weeks is too short a time, it only has to go right before weeks. So only should be before the thing that is surprising you. But how could a team of men drag a heavy sledge 45 miles in only a few weeks? Okay. So after the word in, J, right there is the right answer. Okay. Only a few weeks. What is the thing that you want to emphasize that the few weeks is the short time? So the only has to go before the weeks, before a few weeks, in order to make that emphasis. That's why it goes here and not anywhere else in the sentence. Okay. The researchers discovered that to confront friction, the workers created artificial ice paths. To confront friction? No, this word is incorrect. You don't confront friction, you counteract friction, you mitigate friction, you reduce friction, okay? So you work against it, but you don't confront it. It's not a thing. It's not a person that you confront. So this word is incorrect. So you don't debate it. It's not a person. You don't dispute with it. You counter it. You counter friction. And you know how you do it? You create ice paths that reduce the friction, okay? So to counter friction, so the right answer here is B to 9. The workers created artificial ice paths that poured water on the ground, okay? Now, did the ice paths pour the water? No, the ice paths themselves did not pour the water. So the way this looks is the workers created ice paths and the ice paths poured the water on the ground. So this is clearly incorrect, okay? You need a sentence here, or you need an insert here that indicates that the workers created it, okay? So let's see. Ice paths capable of pouring? No, that still refers back. Ice paths by pouring. Yes, that's a prepositional phrase. It's referring back to workers. How did they create it? By pouring water on the ground. So the ice paths are not creating anything. It's the workers that are creating it. And they do it by pouring. So the right answer is H to number 10. They let the winter air freeze the water and then pulling the sledge over the ice. Okay. Okay, they let the winter air freeze. Let is past tense, right? Plural, they let the winter air freeze the water, and then has to be past tense, simple past tense, plural. All right? And then pulled. See, let is past tense, right? Plural. Pulled is past tense, plural. So these two verbs have to be in the same tense. That's why, and then they pulled. And then they pulled. You don't need that, okay? They let the winter air freeze the water and then pulled. You don't need to repeat they, okay? Because the pulled is referring back to they. So they let and then they pulled. So the right answer to 11 is C. Water and then pulled. Good job. Now we move on to 12. The workers also dug wells along the route so they could pour fresh water over the ice. Okay. So that looks pretty good to me, right? They poured fresh water along the route so they could pour fresh water over the ice. They dug wells along the route so they could pour fresh water over the ice. Well, that looks fine to me. I don't think you need any punctuation here. This was so, you don't need to add this was. That's redundant. It's unnecessary and it's awkward. Thus, so they could, no, again, totally unnecessary. Along the route, they could. You got to have so in there. Why did they dig wells? So they could pour fresh water. So this is perfectly correct as it is. 12 is no change. All of these are just totally redundant. This one is just incorrect. Okay. Okay, fresh water over the ice, comma, thereby further reducing friction. Okay. Let's look at the question. If the writer were to delete the underlined portion, adjusting the punctuation as needed, the essay would primarily lose information that what is the purpose of this phrase? If you were to delete it, you would just put a period here instead of a comma. This is again, basically a subsidiary phrase, right? It's a dependent clause, thereby further reducing the friction. Well, it's clarifying the reason why they're pouring water over the ice. Okay. So what are we going to lose if we take this phrase out? That clarification. So let's look at the choices. What are we going to lose? Okay. Lose information that adds more detail about the methods workers used? Nope. Not the methods, the reason. Illustrates why carts were ineffective? No, it has nothing to do with carts. Helps clarify the reason workers poured water over the ice. Exactly. The reason was to reduce friction further. So C is the right answer to 13. Okay, 14. Let's see. The combination of hard, icy surface and water lubrication were to mean that a small team of workers could move the massive stones quickly and safely. So the combination, and then you need a verb. Okay. All of this is in the past tense, the whole passage. Were to mean is, oh, turn off your microphone. Turn off the mic. Please turn off the microphone. Okay, and water, this has to be past tense. Were to mean means intended, okay? But actually, you just need a simple past tense here. You don't need to imply any intention. You already know why they're doing it, okay? Okay, so let's read the sentence with the three choices. The combination of the hard, icy surface and water lubrication were used so that a small team of workers could move the massive stones quickly and safely, okay? Were used, okay, fine. The combination of the hard, icy surface and water lubrication were used so that a small team of workers could move the massive stones quickly and safely. So that makes perfect sense. The next one, the combination of hard, icy surface and water lubrication have meant, no, that's not simple past tense, okay? So that's incorrect. The tense is incorrect. The combination of hard, icy surface and water lubrication meant that a small team of workers could move the massive stones quickly and safely. So this one could be right too, right? You don't want to change the meaning here. Were to mean. Okay, so the verb was mean, to mean something. If you say use so, you're not really reproducing this. So actually the right answer is meant. So if you read it, the combination of the hard, icy surface and the water lubrication meant that a small team of workers could move the massive stones quickly and safely. So the right answer here is J. If you use G, you're changing the verb. This one is the same verb, just in the proper tense. Okay, very important. These artificial ice paths made possible the construction of the Forbidden City, one of China's most enduring landmarks. Okay, good. So now we have a question 15. The writer wants to add the following true sentence to the essay. The secret was ice. Where in the essay does this sentence belong? So we're going to look at point A, B, C, and D. Let's go to point A. And remember the sentence. The secret was ice. Let's go back to point A and see what we got. Here we go. Researchers Lee, Chen, and Stone in 2013 revealed that workers used a surprising means of transportation, a sledge pulled on ice. Then you would say the secret was ice. Do you really need that sentence there? No, because you just said it was a sledge pulled on ice, okay? So it doesn't make sense to put the secret was ice there. Okay, let's look at the next. Let's look at B, okay? We'll go back to these guys. Zhang, Sheng, and Stone stated that in January, a team of men hauled 123-ton stone to the Forbidden City on a sledge, a platform of wooden runners. The secret was ice. Doesn't really follow, right? From that, you'll kind of get lost, right? On that, the secret was ice. Well, let's see what the next choice is. Let's look at C. Jiang, Sheng, and Stone wondered why the workers chose to slide the stones on sledges instead of using carts. Ah, why? Well, the answer, the secret was ice. I don't really know whether or not that's going to fit. Why did they choose to slide the stones on sledges instead of carts? The secret was ice. Let's check D and see if maybe it fits in a little better on D. Ah, wait a minute. But how could a team of men drag a heavy sledge 45 miles in only a few weeks? The secret was ice. So it's a perplexing question. The answer, the secret is ice. So you're answering the question. So this is where it belongs. This is where it makes the most sense. Because you're saying, oh my God, I can't believe they did it. How could they have done it? Aha, the secret to doing it was ice. So you're responding to your own rhetorical question. So that's what the right answer is to 15. It's D. All the other ones do not provide the right kind of continuity. You could stick it in there, but it doesn't really quite fit. But in D, at point D, it fits perfectly. Okay. Okay, guys. So I think we're not going to do passage 2. I think we'll save that for the next session. But now we have a long passage to read, and then we have 10 questions to answer. Literary narrative. The following excerpt is adapted from the short story Unaccustomed Earth by Jhumpa Lahiri, 2008. Ruma is trying to decide whether to ask her father, who is visiting, to move in with her family. So let's see. Her father's obviously older. He's an older man, and she's a mother, and she's married. She has a child, and she's trying to figure out whether to invite her father to stay with her, to live with her. My dad's planting flowers in the backyard, she told Adam that night on the phone. Adam must be her husband. Does he plan to be around to take care of them? His flippancy irritated her, and she felt defensive on her father's behalf. I don't know. It's Thursday, Ruma. How long are you going to torture yourself? She didn't feel tortured any longer. She had planned to tell Adam this, but now she changed her mind. Instead, she said, I want to wait a few more days, make sure everyone gets along. So she's trying to decide whether or not to invite him. For heaven's sakes, Ruma, Adam said, he's your father. You've known him all your life. So he's telling her to make up her mind. Obviously, he's on the phone, so he's not home. And yet, until now, she had not known certain things about him. She had not known how self-sufficient he could be, how helpful, to the point where she had not had to wash a dish since he arrived. At dinner, he was flexible. Appreciating the grilled fish and chicken breasts, she began preparing after the Indian food ran out, making do with a can of soup for lunch. But it was her son, Akash, who brought out a side of her father that surprised Ruma most. In the evenings, her father stood beside her in the bathroom as she gave Akash his bath, scrubbing the caked on dirt from his elbows and knees. He helped put on his pajamas, brush his teeth, and comb back his soft, damp hair. When Akash had fallen asleep one afternoon on the living room carpet, her father made sure to put a pillow under his head, drape a cotton blanket over his body. By now, Akash insisted on being read to at night by her father, sleeping downstairs in her father's bed. So clearly, her dad, who is Akash's grandfather, is taking very good care of him, of the little boy. The first night Akash slept with her father, she went downstairs to make sure he'd fallen asleep. She saw a sliver of light under her father's door and heard the sound of his voice reading Green Eggs and Ham. She imagined them both under the covers, their heads reclining against the pillows, the book between them, Akash turning the pages as her father read. It was obvious that her father did not know the book by heart as she did, that he was encountering it for the first time in his life. He read awkwardly, pausing between the sentences, his voice oddly animated as it was not in ordinary speech. Still, his effort touched her. And as she stood by the door, she realized that for the first time in his life, her father had fallen in love. She was about to knock and tell her father that it was past Akash's bedtime, that he should turn out the light. But she stopped herself, returning upstairs, briefly envious of her own son. So basically, she sees that her father is really adoring this little boy. The garden was coming along nicely. It was a futile exercise, he knew. He could not picture his daughter or his son-in-law caring for it properly, noticing what needed to be done. In weeks, he guessed, it would be overgrown with weeds, the leaves chewed up by slugs. Then again, perhaps they would hire someone to do the job. He would have preferred to put in vegetables, but they required more work than flowers. It was a modest planting, some slow-growing myrtle and phlox under the trees, 2 azalea bushes, a row of hostas, a clematis to climb one of the posts on the porch, and in honor of his wife, a small hydrangea. In a plot behind the kitchen, unable to resist, he also put in a few tomatoes, along with some marigolds and impatiens. It was just time for a small harvest to come in by the fall. He spaced out the delphiniums, tied them to stalks, stuck some of the gladiola bulbs in the ground. He missed working outside, the solid feeling of dirt under his knees, getting into his nails, the smell of it lingering on his skin, even after he'd scrubbed himself in the shower. It was the one thing he missed about the old house, and when he thought about his garden was when he missed his wife most keenly. She had taken that from him. For years after the children had grown, it had just been the 2 of them, but she managed to use up all the vegetables, putting them into dishes he did not know how to prepare himself. In addition, when she was alive, they regularly entertained, their guests marveling that the potatoes were from their own backyard, taking away bagfuls at evening's end. He looked over at Akash's little plot, the dirt carefully mounded up around his toys, pens, and pencils, stuck into the ground. Pennies were there too, all the spare ones he'd had in his pockets. When will the plants come out? Akash called out from the swimming pool, where he stood crouching over a little sailboat. Soon. Tomorrow? Not so soon. These things take time, Akash. Do you remember what I taught you this morning? And Akash recited his numbers in Bengali from 1 to 10. So the narrator is telling you all about what Ruma is thinking, the daughter, right? Until you get to here. And then the perspective of the narrator switches. He's telling you what the father is thinking. So this part is Ruma, this part is the father, okay? And you can see when you look at the very last part of this, it looks like Akash is imitating his grandfather. His grandfather's planting a garden. So Akash plants a garden too, but he plants it with toys and pens and pencils and pennies, because he's a little boy and he doesn't really understand the difference between a living thing that can grow and just objects that can't grow. But he's kind of flattering his grandfather by trying to imitate him. Okay? So that's kind of a cute little thing at the end, if you're wondering. All right, guys, so we'll start with question 1. The point of view from which the passage is told is best described as that of an unidentified narrator relating the thoughts and actions of both Ruma and Ruma's father, an unidentified narrator relating the thoughts and actions of both Ruma and Adam, Ruma, who relates her own thoughts and actions, Ruma's father, who relates his own thoughts and actions. So what is this? Is this a third person narrator or is this a first person? Who has an answer for me? Anybody? Okay, so A is the right answer, an unidentified narrator who relates the thoughts and actions of Ruma and then switches over and relates the thoughts and actions of Ruma's father. Okay, so the right answer to 1 is A. Okay, first person would be Ruma saying, I did this, I did that, or the father saying, I did this, I did that. That's not what you see in this passage. It's third person narrator. Okay, question 2. The passage can best be described as an exploration of, let's see what the choices are. A family's ongoing disagreement, family's shifting dynamics, a husband's relationship with his wife, a mother's struggle with raising a child. What do you think the best answer is here?
G.
Exactly, shifting dynamics. So basically, here's the deal. There was a time when Ruma was a little girl, and her father was basically head of the household with her mother, and she lived with them. It was their house. Then she grew up, she got married, she had her own house, had a child. Again, everything's changing. Then her mom and dad lived together until her mother died. Now her father's all alone, he's older, and he's coming to visit. So everything has changed. All the relationships are a little bit different now. And she's about to ask him to move in with her because he's all by himself. So the right answer is G, a family shifting dynamics. Excellent. Based on the passage, Akash's attitude toward Ruma's father can best be described as patient, diffident, meaning shy, resentful, meaning he doesn't like his grandfather, or adoring. What do you think the right answer is here? Anybody?
E.
Yeah, adoring. I mean, he loves to run downstairs and read books with his grandfather and sleep in his grandfather's bed. He imitates his grandfather planting a garden. So clearly he adores his grandfather. Makes every grandfather happy. Okay, D is right. In the context of the passage, the word drape, line 29, mainly serves to highlight the. So let's go back and look at line 29. Akash had fallen asleep one afternoon on the living room carpet. Her father made sure to put a pillow under his head, drape a cotton blanket over his body. So this is implying a level of care, right? A certain amount of tenderness. He's trying to keep him warm. So let's see what choices. Highlights the hasty way in which Akash covers himself, the attentive way in which Ruma's father tends to Akash. Yes. He gives him a pillow and then he covers him with a blanket so he won't get cold. So G is the right answer there. Okay. Question 5. Which of the following statements most effectively summarizes the action described in the 8th paragraph, lines 32 through 49? So we got to go back and look at lines 32 through 49. Okay. The first night Akash slept with the father, she went downstairs to make sure he'd fallen asleep. So he's down there reading with the grandfather, and she hears a voice, and then she sees a light, and then she goes, oh, he's reading a book. And she's imagining how they're lying in bed and how Akash is turning the pages and her dad is reading a book that he doesn't really know. It's his first time seeing it. And she's very touched. She's very moved by that. that their relationship. And she also sees that her father adores the little boy too. She was about to knock and tell her father it was past his bedtime, but she didn't do it. She let them continue to read because she thought, wait a minute, why ruin something so special? Okay. And she said she was briefly envious, meaning she wondered whether or not her dad loved her as much as he loved her son. And that's always happens when you have grandchildren. The grandparents always love the grandchildren more. It's just the way it is. You have to accept it. So basically, that's it. That's the story. So let's go back to question 5. Which of the following statements effectively summarizes the action in that paragraph? Ruma goes to see if Akash is sleeping, overhears her father reading him a book, and decides not to interrupt him. Well, what do you think of that answer? Pretty darn good, right? Ruma tells her father that it's past Akash's bedtime. She didn't do that. Ruma goes to Akash is ready for bed and overhears him and her father taking turns. Nope, the old man's reading. Ruma overhears her father reading Akash a book, tells her father that it's bad. Nope, she never says a word. So the only right answer is A. She chooses not to interrupt him. Okay, 6. Based on the passage, Ruma's father plants fewer vegetables in Ruma's garden than he would have liked because he knows that Ruma is unlikely to incorporate the vegetables into meals. It doesn't say that. Don't add things. He has lost interest in growing and harvesting. Doesn't say that at all. He wanted to plant more. He knows that Ruma and Adam are unlikely to put in the work it takes to tend the vegetables. Yes, that's the right answer. He's worried that Akash will trample. It doesn't say that. But he does say he planted flowers because they were less work, right? Because he figures he's leaving and the flowers have a better chance of growing and surviving than the vegetables because Ruma and her husband Adam are not going to tend to them properly. Okay, so H is the right answer to 6. Okay, in the context of the passage, the detail about the toys, pens, pencils, and pennies in the ground mainly serves to indicate that Akash often leaves his things in the backyard. Ruma's father has more work to do. Ruma has neglected the garden. Akash has been inspired by his grandfather to start a garden of his own. Well, obviously the right answer is D. He's imitating his dad, his grandfather. He just doesn't realize that pencils and pens don't grow, pennies don't grow, but he's trying to make a garden just like his grandfather. So clearly he's inspired by his grandfather. So the right answer is D to number 7. Number 8, in the context of the passage, the detail that Ruma is briefly envious of her own son suggests that Ruma believes that her father and Akash's relationship is stronger than her and her father's relationship. Yeah, for a brief moment. Wishes that Akash would show her the same level of affection. No, she's jealous of her son, she's not jealous of her father. So G makes no sense. Is less patient with Akash than she would like to be. Doesn't say that. Is less emotionally mature than Akash. Doesn't say that. So for a brief moment, she believes that her father and her son have a better relationship than she has with her own father. Just for a brief moment, it crosses her mind. So F is the right answer to number 8. Okay, number 9. According to the passage, Ruma's father plants a small hydrangea in the garden, mainly because I think we should go back and see that because, let's see, gladiola bulbs. Here we go. And in honor of his wife, a small hydrangea. So it even says it right in the passage. According to the passage, he plants a small hydrangea in the garden. He knows that it is easy to take care of. He remembers that it is Ruma's favorite. He wants to honor his wife's memory. Aha, that's the right answer. He believes it will bring Ruma and Adam good luck. So in honor of his wife, he plants the hydrangea. She must have loved those. So C is the right answer to 9. As it is used in line 64, the phrase come in most nearly means, well, let's go back to 64. Okay. In a few tomatoes, along with some marigolds and impatience, there was just time for a small harvest to come in the fall. In other words, to be produced, to be created, to be available. As it is used in line 64, the phrase came in most clearly means take part, approach, perform, mature. There it is, mature. So like if the tomatoes are too green and too small, can't harvest them. You got to wait for them to grow bigger and turn a little bit red, right? So they have to mature. Same with corn or any other vegetable, right? You can't just harvest it when it's sitting there immature, right? I mean, you can do that with fried green tomatoes, but with most vegetables, you can't do that. Okay. So mature is the right answer, J, to number 10. Okay, guys. So now we're going to stop sharing and we're going to go to our vocabulary list. And we have some good words tonight. Let me skip this. This is always the million pop-ups of Microsoft that will never leave you alone. Here we go. Okay, our first word is vehement. Now, I must tell you, do not pronounce the H. Don't say vehement, even though the H is there, it's silent. So you say vehement, okay? No H is needed. I mean, you need it to spell, but not to pronounce. Okay, so what does it mean to be vehement? Anybody?
Strong and full of dislike.
Showing strong feeling or force, passionate, intense. So it doesn't necessarily mean dislike per se. If you hate someone vehemently, yeah, you don't like them. But for example, he was vehement about bringing food along on the trip. It means you really feel strong about it. You're passionate. He was vehement about bringing an extra water supply on the journey. Okay, so it's strong passion, strong feeling. Okay, flippancy. What does it mean to be flippant?
Irritated.
Flippant means a lack of respect or seriousness. It's like you're not taking something serious. You're acting kind of like it doesn't mean anything. Like, let's say, okay, here's a good example. You get into a car accident, right? And you're fine, but your car is totaled. Your car is destroyed. And then your mom says to you, well, what are you going to do? No, just get another car. No biggie. That's flippant. You act like something that should take some thought and some focus and some seriousness, and you dismiss it like it doesn't matter. You act flippantly. Okay? Or, like someone says, oh, I wish Sally would, study for her tests. And then you say, well, she'll fail anyway. That's the kind of flippant comment that it's a little disrespectful, frankly. So don't be flippant. When people are discussing something serious, take it seriously. Okay. Arboreal. What does it mean to be arboreal?
Something relating to trees.
Yeah. So Arbor Day is like when you celebrate trees, right? So arboreal animals live in the trees. So can you name an animal for me that's arboreal?
Owl.
Yeah, an owl's good. Or how about a sloth or a monkey? Birds, anything that lives up in the trees is arboreal. Okay, good. Arcane. What does it mean to be arcane?
To know or understand by very few.
Yeah, that's a very good word. I love the word arcane because it's understood by very few. It's kind of mysterious, kind of secret. So, for example, an arcane ritual is used by the Freemasons when they induct a new member. I mean, arcane means it's kind of hidden, it's mysterious. Nobody really knows what happens inside there during the ritual. So I want you to use that word in a sentence this week a few times, because that's a great word to have in your dictionary, in your head. Arcane. Okay. All right. Archetypal. What does archetypal mean?
I mean, having the nature of a model.
Yeah, it's very typical of a certain kind of person or a certain kind of thing. He is the archetypal engineer. He loves to sit at his desk and do trigonometry. He's the archetypal engineer. He's the classic, the typical, the model for an engineer. He has thick glasses, a pocket protector. He has a scientific calculator. He always carries graph paper with him. He's the archetypal engineer. Okay, good. Ascetic. What does it mean to be ascetic?
To dedicate your life to a religion.
Very true. Very true. In most cases, when you're an ascetic, it's for religious purposes. So asceticism tends to go along with religion. You deny yourself. You live a very stringent, limited life with no luxuries, self-discipline, self-denial, abstaining from all pleasures. So Francis of Assisi, Saint Francis, who was a Catholic saint, who founded the Franciscan movement among the Catholics, gave up all his worldly possessions. He was very rich when he was young. He was a playboy, had everything he wanted, ate fantastic meals, dressed like a gentleman, and all of the advantages of wealth. Gave it all up for the church. And he only had one smock. It was like a robe that he wore. That's all he had. And he was barefoot. He had no shoes. And he slept on the ground outside, slept with the animals. He lived a very ascetic life. And as you point out, many, many times, it's done for religious purposes. And by the way, St. Francis of Assisi is the patron saint of animals. There's a belief that he could talk to the animals and they would understand him. So he was the first Dr. Dolittle. Anyway. Okay, so ascetic. Yeah, I agree with you. It has a kind of religious overtone to it, but there are some people that practice asceticism even though they don't believe in any religion. They just like to deny themselves things, live a hard life. Okay, aspersion. What is an aspersion?
A damaging remark or criticism.
Absolutely. So you're always going to hear this word after the word cast. Do not cast aspersions. I frankly have never heard this word when it isn't preceded by the word cast. He is casting aspersions on other members of Congress. Essentially what it means when you cast aspersions is you're attacking people's reputation, you're attacking their integrity, you're attacking their honesty, their decency. It's a very personal thing. You want to be casting aspersions on people. Okay, it's kind of a careless thing, like you're just accusing people and you're not very thoughtful about it. Okay, so that's what aspersions are. And we're going to talk about that word. Assiduous. What does it mean to be assiduous?
Constant in application or effort.
Yeah, you got to be assiduous when you do your homework. You can't be like playing the radio and getting on your phone and texting people and getting up for a snack and, checking out the TV. I mean, come on, be assiduous. In other words, show care, show focus, and show perseverance. Stick with it. Be assiduous. You sit down to do your homework, you shouldn't get up until it's done. Unless you have to go to the bathroom. That's the one exception I will allow. Okay, atrophy. What is it when something atrophies?
It gets wasted away.
Yeah, it wastes away. It declines generally because it's been neglected and underused. Now, I want to tell you that the word atrophy in medicine refers to muscles. So, for example, if you are starving and you don't have enough protein in your diet, you start breaking down muscle for energy, and your muscle tissue wastes away, and you get weaker and weaker and weaker, and we call that muscle atrophy. So it has a very specific meaning in biology. But you can use the word atrophy to basically describe something that's declining, something that's shrinking, something that's being neglected. So for example, his sense of right and wrong was atrophying because he spent too much time with bad people. Okay, that would be another way to use the word atrophy. So it doesn't have to refer to muscles. It can refer to other things that are getting weaker. Okay? So the next word is bane, B-A-N-E. What is a bane?
A person or thing that ruins or spoils.
Yeah, absolutely. So the expression you will always hear is, he is the bane of my existence. He's the curse of my existence, the great annoyance of my existence. He's a pain in the butt. So people will always say, he's the bane of my existence. Or you could say something like, he was the bane of the party. Just really pissing everyone off, saying the wrong things, spilling his drinks on everyone, you know? So being the bane of something is really not good. Okay, so those are your words, and I want you to use the word arcane in a couple of times this week in sentences. And people aren't going to know what you mean. But that's okay. You can explain it to them afterwards. Try it on your parents. Okay, the first word is arcane. Now, arcane, we're doing etymology now, right? It comes from the Latin arcanus, and arcanus means hidden or private. And the verb arcere, okay, the verb form of this means to close something up in a box. Arcere, to put it in a chest or box. Guess what? The word ark, like Noah's ark, comes from the same root. And what did the ark do? It contained the animals. Okay, so think of something as hidden, closed up, contained. That from the Latin. Okay, so Noah's ark is from the same Latin root as the word arcane. You also have the word Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant. Who knows what the Ark of the Covenant is? Anybody? It's from the Old Testament. Did somebody answer me? It's in the book of Genesis, the Ark of the Covenant. So basically, God gave Moses the 10 Commandments on 2 slabs of stone. And he told Moses to build a box of acacia wood and to gild it with gold and to put the tablets, the stone tablets of the 10 Commandments into the box. And the covenant was the deal that the Jews made with God, that they would follow his commandments and he would protect them as the chosen people. So the Ark of the Covenant is the box that holds the 10 Commandments. And people are still looking for it. I think it was the thing that in the movie Raiders of the Lost Ark, it was the thing that Harrison Ford was looking for, the Ark of the Covenant. Okay, so there you go, the word arcane, arcere, hidden, closed up, contained. Good. Now, and that's from the Latin. Now, the next word we're going to do is aspersion. And this is interesting. This is also from Latin. And asperenium is Latin and it means sprinkling, a sprinkling. Like if you take water and you just kind of sprinkle it on someone's face. So aspersions, think of that as sprinkling people with water, but it's not really water, it's insults. It's insults, accusations, false accusations sometimes, casting aspersions. It comes from the Latin aspergere, which means to sprinkle or to scatter. And the word has changed now. It doesn't mean water anymore. It means scattering insults or scattering accusations, attacking people, just kind of a careless way, the way you would take a sprinkler and just kind of sprinkle someone with water. Okay. And interestingly enough, the word spores, S-P-O-R-E-S, comes from this word. Spores. What are spores? Well, when fungus forms spores, the spores fly away. They catch the wind on a breeze or an air current. So they're essentially sprinkling away their spores. And that's how fungus spreads itself, by spores. Okay? And then there's a ritual in the Catholic Church called aspergus, and that is essentially It's a container with holes in it, little holes in it. And the priest will come around and shake it towards you. And inside the container is holy water that's been blessed. So when he shakes that water, that container with the water, you get a few sprinkles on you of holy water. It's supposed to basically be a blessing from God. And they call that in the Latin church aspergus, which is directly related to the word aspersion. Okay? And guys, that pretty much covers it. Anybody have any questions for me? Okay, your assignment is to use the word vehement, but not pronounce the H. Use the word vehement in a sentence. And I want you to use the word arcane in a couple of times this week. And the only way you're going to incorporate these words into your vocabulary is by using them. You're not going to remember them just because you read a list and memorized it. It's better to go back over these lists, reread these words, reread the definitions over and over again, and then try to write sentences with the words in them. And then if you keep doing that and you try to use them when you're talking, one day you're going to be talking to someone and suddenly the word's going to come out because it's just the right word that you needed. And that'll happen spontaneously. Once you have that word mastered, it's inside your memory, it'll pop out when you need it. Okay? And remember, we're not doing this just for the SATs and the ACTs. We're doing this so that you can communicate more effectively, both in orally and in writing. Okay? People judge you by language. They judge you by the language you use. It's very important. Language is a wonderful tool, probably the greatest invention of the human mind. And it also is a form of power. Okay? All right, we'll see you next week. Take care, guys.